Welcome to Alimentary, the podcast series where you will learn about your amazing body, how it works, and of course why food is so important, and also pick up some simple recipe and lifestyle tips and tweaks to help you to influence your health in a positive way. Recently, I had the opportunity to take part in a workshop with teens, and I was invited by Deirdre O'Reilly, who is a child and adolescent psychotherapist and specialises in play therapy. So we had a brilliant afternoon. We made soup, chia puddings, chocolate bark and cookies, and I met some fabulous teenagers. It also gave me the chance to learn a little bit more about what Deirdre does and see her in action. And that afternoon, it occurred to me that I think that there are many parents or aunties, uncles, grandparents or guardians out there who might like to know a little bit more about services for children's mental health and why there should be no stigma attached if you think that your child needs support. When I asked Dee if she could share an anonymous case study with us to illustrate the kind of family situation that play therapy can help with, she generously shared from her own experience. Deirdre graduated in October 2020 with a postgrad diploma in play therapy and in October 2023 with a Master of Arts in Creative Psychotherapy, Humanistic and Integrative Modality. In her past career, she has worked as a part-time drama facilitator in various schools and community centres for 11 years, and she also has nearly 20 years' experience of working as a medical secretary for GPs in the Cavan area. Both of her occupations married to give her what she now knows is creative psychotherapy. Deirdre always had a keen interest in children and their development, and it brings her great joy to see children figure things out in the playroom. And she believes that the powers of play are fascinating. So I know that you'll enjoy my conversation with Deirdre O'Reilly. So Deirdre, thanks a million for coming on to Alimentary. And I was wondering, could we just maybe start with how you became interested in play therapy?
No problem at all. Lynn, thank you very much for asking me. I'm only delighted. So it's a bit of a funny one. It's where two occupations married, as I say, which led me to know about play therapy. So my background information is I was a medical secretary for nearly 20 years in numerous surgeries all around the county of Cavan. And I guess maybe that was the scientific part of it. I really enjoyed the medical side of it. But I knew I kind of wanted a little bit more for myself going forward. And I went to Maynooth and I studied drama and theatre studies. Absolutely loved it. That was my creative side coming out. Really enjoyed it. And I set up speech and drama classes and drama workshops with a friend of mine. Now, as wonderful as they were, spent nearly 11 years at that part-time. I was always drawn to the child in the room, which maybe was the shy child coming in, or the very nervous character, or the child that had to be prized out of the car to attend their hour session. And I always wondered, why is the child this way? So then researching a little bit more and yes, enjoying the drama side of things, enjoying the play aspect more than the show. I researched and found out about play therapy, and it was such a light bulb moment. It was this is what I am meant to be doing with my life.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, you just knew.
Straight away. It was an absolute, I do say to people, it was like a calling. I couldn't get away from it. I kept being drawn back into it and finding the courses and just play therapy popping up or creative psychotherapy popping up. And I'm like, what is this about? And then, it took me a long time now to fill out the application form, but I did. And sure, here I am.
Great. And as you say, we can often come to something maybe, as from our life experience and from other courses that you did, and all of a sudden all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle fit together and you just say, oh yeah, that's it.
That was it. Yeah. That was exactly it.
I suppose for our listeners, would you mind just explaining a little bit about what play therapy is?
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you a quote from Gary Landrett,
Oh, yeah.
and it says, "Birds fly, fish swim, children play."
Very good.
And if we just think about that,
Mm.
it play is vitally important for children. It is how we learn a lot about ourselves, a lot about friendships, dynamics. Um, if you, I don't know, but if anyone out there is listening, if you ever interrupt a child playing, and don't give them the heads up that you're leaving or that, you have to go somewhere and they're in the middle of something, you really, unless you've been earwigging, have no idea what they could have been doing in that play. They could have been solving the world. They may have been trying to understand, a bit of playground politics. It may have been just a role play that they're actually reenacting. That's something that may have happened. And it's vitally important for the process of a situation. Obviously, play is fun. But that's kind of the essence of it, that play is vital. And, the toys and how the child play, that's their language, and I'm saying this would even come now about for like a non-verbal child. It's how they're playing, what they're playing with, and how that plays out in their playroom or in a session, that we're understanding and getting a little bit more information about the world that they live in.
Well, that makes so much sense. But yeah, absolutely. We just think that they're just passing time playing, but actually, as you say, it's a learning. They're wiring their brain.
Massive, like it's as they say, it's serious business. Play is serious business, and it's huge. There's huge self-confidence, a very much a positive self-image,
Mm.
and it's, of course, I'm all about, as I'd say, I'm the emotional regulator as well. It is understanding your emotions, but that all gets played out. It
Mm.
all gets played out in some way. Might not be play. You might be saying, oh, the behavior's off, or that's such a bold child. But, there is no such thing as a bold child. There's a sad child, an unhappy child, a lonely child, a scared child. And those big, big feelings will get played out in a behavior.
Mm. So it's nearly like their behavior is a form of communication if you can learn how to
100%.
understand that. Yeah.
100%. It's a shout for help.
Okay. And would you, as a play therapist, would you work with a certain age group or is it right the way up to 18?
Yeah, so I am, as I said, a child and adolescent psychotherapist. I specialise in play therapy. So my age range is from 3 right up to 18.
Okay, great. Um, and I suppose I presume then for the sessions and approaches vary, depending
Mhm.
on the age group and but typically in a session, is there a particular structure? If someone was to book their child in for a session, what could they expect?
Yeah, so, I would work a lot with parents prior to ever seeing a child. I
Mm.
do what's called a parental consultation or a parental intake. And in this intake, I try and find out as much as is possible within an hour and a half, about the family dynamic, about the child. And, I go right back, actually, Lynn, I'll go right back to pregnancy and labour, because those early days are vital, for the foundation of trust to be implemented. So, like, I might do one intake, kind of rare. I'm usually kind of doing 2 or 3 these days. But I will try and find out as much as possible. So, as I do always say to parents and caregivers that come to me, like, they're so brave, because I'm really poking and prodding for
Mm.
information, and I'm asking very personal questions. So the very start of the whole process is the relationship of myself and the caregiver. That I'm going to be asking all these questions about their family dynamic and about the child that they're the expert of. I am not. At the end of the day, I only see this child for 1 hour, 1 day a week. I don't live with the child. They do. They know them inside out. But hence the reason why I do applaud them for saying, well done you for stepping forward and for seeking help.
Yeah, that's so important for there to be no judgment, and you're a perfect kind of person to be trained in this capacity, because that's just who you are. You're not at all judgmental, and that, as you say, when people are being so vulnerable, it's really important that they don't feel judged and that
Oh,
nobody's
no,
no situation is perfect.
absolutely not. Oh Lord, no, not at all. And that's where, you have to, I suppose, and it's all in the training, Lynn, um, you have to make sure that you're not being judgmental. If you are, it's kind of like, oh, hold up, Deirdre, just pull the reins back in there. What was
Mm.
that? But I may have been triggered by something within the conversation that made me think a certain way. So I would just have to just slow it all down, have a think, and just be with in the present moment that person that's sitting right in front of me. It's extremely important.
And I presume that the parents may not be present in the session with the children, or would they be,
So
or yeah.
it depends on the situation and the
Mm.
complexity of what they're bringing forward. I have had on numerous occasions a parent who will be with me for the entire sessions. So it doesn't bother me. That probably would have come from the background in drama classes where parents might be standing at the back of the room. It doesn't bother me. As I say to them, I'm politely going to ignore you and I'm going to concentrate on the child. But yeah, I've had numerous parents sit in, and I don't ignore them per se. It's usually because God bless the child, they want to be seen and heard by the parent, so they'll actually ask the parent to play, and I'd be like, oh, absolutely, wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah.
So then we bring the parent in, and I don't ignore obviously the parent then. But if the parent isn't involved in the play, they just sit back, and I tell them bring a book or
Mm.
just sit and maybe try not comment unless you're asked, but
Exactly.
don't
Yeah.
comment
Yeah,
on
because
anything.
you want the child to be telling, everything that's in their heart, that they're not afraid of upsetting their parents, or saying the wrong thing or whatever. But of course, then parents need to be comfortable that if they want to sit in, eh, you know, if they want to sit in on the session to because they want to care for the child and
Yeah,
learn and everything, of course, it's
yeah,
great
and
to offer both.
just to be open, I suppose as well, and like they might hear something they're a little bit surprised about, and
Yeah.
I'm going, I'm not judging. Don't worry if something's
Yeah.
brought up, and you're going, oh, that never happened. Don't say it in the session. We'll talk about it
Yeah.
at a later stage. But it's how the child viewed it at
Yeah.
maybe the particular time, or maybe just a scenario that they took up wrong.
Mm.
Um, but there's obviously, the therapeutic relationship is extremely important there. Number one, for the parent to trust that I'm going to just be very open minded and curious when it comes to the situation, but also that, the client, as I call them, the children, that they are trusting of me to bring the issue. Now,
Mm.
sometimes what they were, sent to me for might never come up in conversation, but you know, 9 times out of 10, I will usually see a situation played out in the room and it will be linked in some way to the situation that the parent would have brought.
Yeah. And I suppose that's where you mentioned that you do work with the parents first. That's hour and a half is so important to build trust and to set some guidelines and boundaries and all of that.
And that's it. And like I go down through, it's quite a thorough one. I'm also taking into consideration my pre-therapy considerations. Like, you know what? Is this the right time for therapy?
Mm.
You know, you're also doing this and this. You know what? I might not come in now, but you know what? When you're finished doing that 6 weeks of whatnot, I'll come in after that and see where you're at.
Mm.
Or sometimes, Lynn, it's the case the parent will go, maybe can I maybe come for some parental support? And then if the parent really gets it and is really, wanting and willing this to work, and also try and understand play therapy, understand child and adolescent psychotherapy, that they're like, okay, maybe I just need to work on a few little things myself. And then it's like, okay, well, sure, we could work together. And you know what? After 4 weeks, let's look at it.
Mm.
And I remember running a summer pilot program for 6 weeks there, probably 2 or 3 years ago now at this stage. And I had four parents and mammies, as it happened. And out of the four, two said, you know what, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm good. I don't need my child to go to play therapy, and they recognized something in themselves that had been triggered that was causing a reaction, and therefore the family dynamic to be a little bit off. But they recognized that. And then that was just the particular issue that they were going through. That they said, you know what? No, it's okay. I don't need to bring anyone.
Great.
I might come back to you at a later stage. And I said, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I thought that was wonderful. I was like, this is brilliant. So I love the parent work, the parent support work. I love it.
Amazing.
I think it's vital. Yeah. And not no more than what you said, for them to be able to ask as many questions as is possible. How does this work? How is you in here sitting playing darts going to help my 13-year-old? I don't get it. I mean, I'm like, no, darts is on point. This is brilliant crack.
Yeah. And even the simple thing of when we did the workshop together with the teenagers, even playing cards is amazing. I mean, we love, if we're going away, we'll bring a pack of cards because it's just fun and you're communicating and you're off phones and
it's easy.
It's amazing.
It's easy.
Yeah.
And there doesn't necessarily have to be that eye contact. That's so many, and it's just so many children are just awkward with it. It's like, stop looking at me so intently, like you're driving me bonkers and I can't look at you. Yeah. So I will always talk about the side on, the conversations in the car. You're focusing on the road and you just might happen to be asking some questions, but it's not this serious note and eyes kind of looking at you, willing, like, give me an answer now. It's like, it can be that little bit more relaxed approach in conversation, but you're still chatting, no more than the darts or the card games, or as what we did, baking. That was such a beautiful afternoon. And they absolutely loved it. So, and that's very regulated. It's very sensory, you see, the baking. So that was just a win-win. It's a total win-win that afternoon,
So I presume that you might see kids and parents coming with, all sorts of issues, challenges, like obviously bereavement is an obvious one. Family illness, and breakups of families, of course, are, more common these days. So I presume, Deirdre, that you probably see lots of different kinds of situations. Is there anyone, obviously anonymous, would you have a case study that might illustrate how play therapy could help children, like, move through a situation, something that you could maybe share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be using one that's close to home, because in the event that anyone's listening here and they're thinking, oh my God, is she going to bring my little, no, I'm not. I'm bringing my own daughter. So no one needs to worry. But number one, just when you brought up about the issues, so really and truly the list is endless. Okay. So obviously, with working in a cancer support centre, I do deal with bereavement and loss. And different kind of family disruptions, let's call it. But really it will go from, because of my range as well, and because of the child and adolescent psychotherapy, it will go from literally, less traumatic to complexities is like the range. So just the issues, as I said, there can be behavior issues, communication difficulties, delayed development, educational delays, relationship difficulties. You mentioned parental separation, bereavement and loss, trauma, abuse or neglect, anxiety, bullying, low self-esteem, poor play skills. I remember one of my very first clients, way back in my training, was toileting issues. And some family can say that, oh, that's not traumatic. It's just a child trying to get through a developmental milestone. But, that's a very important developmental milestone in a child's life, and I'll never forget it. It was really, really interesting. And thankfully everything worked out in the end.
Yeah, because it's so important for their physical health.
So important that, that for gut, and just the holding and everything, and feelings can obviously be a physical thing, but emotionally there could be a lot being held within that area as well, when it comes to toileting issues. But for you to ask me about a case study, I will. One of the other reasons, I suppose, why I did get involved and want to become a play therapist was because with my second child, we had a traumatic birth. So I was traumatized, my baby was traumatized, and it took years for us to come back on track, and probably for me to recognize really what had happened. And it rocked us, it rocked us as a family. And I had another child already, and she was only a year, 11 months old, not even a year. So I had the Irish twins, and just that complete and utter change in a family dynamic, because it was pure shock. It was really not knowing which end of us was up, and to try and get trauma that was stuck inside a little baby's body as well as the mammy's body has taken years for it to resolve. And I could see that through the lens of a play therapist, how very gently the approaches helped us along and helped us realize that, okay, this is no one's fault. It happened. And now we have to try as best we can to stop the blame and stop the shame, and just to get that shock out of our bodies. But it would have been, the guts 2-3 years initially to try and get the right bond between all of us. Because my daughter wouldn't go to anybody else but me. And I was breastfeeding, and then that whole weaning as well was like another trauma, because I had to go back to work and to try and put her on a bottle. So like it was very complex, Lynn, initially what we went through. And coming out of that, and my daughter is now turning 9 this June, but will still have the signs of a child who was shook, I suppose. Should be quite a nervous little character. However, of recent, we have been working really, really hard on that. And I am going to talk about nutrition as well, which really has played a vital part in our story. But my daughter is also, she's also dyslexic. So, can I make a link there? I don't think I'm going to bother, but I do often think of her brain development when we were so traumatized, and when she had to be taken into SCABU, so she was taken off me immediately, and I did get skin to skin, but it was it was minutes. So all of that kind of a jigsaw. I am a curious person. I'm probably always going to look back and wonder, if everything had been okay, would she have been dyslexic, or, would she be that nervous character? So I'm always curious about that. But play therapy and its approaches, and in the acknowledgement of that very scared child. And I mean, I talk about this limit setting and boundary setting. It's called ACT, acknowledging the feeling, communicating the limit, and targeting an alternative. And once my daughter knows that I am acknowledging her in a moment, whatever it might be, a row with her other sisters, or an upset from, not watching telly or something, once she knows that she's been acknowledged in that very moment, there is a regulation that happens in the body, and she knows she's been heard and been seen, not dismissed or ignored. That really is the starting point of paving kind of the positive kind of side to parenting. And don't get me wrong, there's days when it's just, I'm completely dysregulated myself, and I will react and I will become triggered. But that's my stuff. and I have to be accountable for me. I'm the adult in this relationship. So there's been a lot of soul searching now, Lynn, and there's been a lot of work done on myself.
Yeah, well,
And
we all need to do that, really, don't we? And thank you
mm,
for sharing that, obviously personal story. And I think that would be really beneficial to a lot of people, Deirdre, because um, we sort of think a traumatic birth is an event. And I'm sure people think, oh, well, you're both great. Thank God. Sorry you had to go through that, but it's done and, everybody's okay. But
mm,
actually, as you've explained, a trauma to a little small body and to yours as well, it does and can take years to recognize and leave the body. And it's also probably good for people to understand there's no sort of magic pill either. So it does take work.
absolutely
Mm.
years. And I can say, like, and I just pinpointed, I know when she was 2, there was definitely um, just a little bit more ease in how we were able to um, be in the house. But at the same time, years, Lynn, years. She's coming 9 now, and um, a very sensitive character, nervous in new situations. And I know people say, she get nervous in new situations anyway. And it's like, no one likes change. And I completely understand that. But there's just a little bit of an extension on what I see of like going, okay, this is a behavior that is just a little bit more complicated than just being nervous because you're going into your first day of school or changing
Yeah,
classroom.
it's a bit more layered.
Just a little
Um,
bit.
I think that's it's actually also another lovely reason that it's of benefit that you share your story is that I'm sure that clients coming to you will know, oh, she gets it. And I'm sure that gives them a sense of trust and again going back to not being judged, and I think a lot of therapists actually maybe find a therapy out of their own experience
Mm.
because you
Yeah,
can truly empathize then.
100%. And, anyone, um, majority of people would have heard about my daughter because in some way or another, it might be neurodivergence or it might be the anxious little child or the nervous character or school refusal. And I mean, I get it. I just get it. I see a parent and I see an upset parent and maybe a broken family. And, I 100% empathize with them and I feel their pain.
Mm.
And hence, why I like to think that I am approachable in nature when it comes to certain issues that will land in my door. That it's like, come in, sit down, let's have a cup of tea and have the chats,
Yeah.
and then we look at resourcing, but just actually get it out. Just let's talk it out,
Mm.
you know, and then we take it from there. But yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Well, you definitely were always approachable in nature and lovely to have a chat with even before you became a therapist, Deirdre. So, it's definitely
Thank you.
helps. Well, thank you so much. I will be obviously putting all of your contact details in the show notes. But I think that you've given us a really good idea of the spectrum of issues that play therapy can help. And also, for me, certainly a new respect for play itself. When
Yeah,
you are
I
playing, when I'm
hope so.
playing with my little nieces and nephews, you're just having a bit of crack, but actually, as you say, it,
Yeah.
it can be
It's
helpful
serious
to them.
business.
Yeah. So that's great, Deirdre. Thank you so much for your time.
Not at all, Lynn. Much appreciated. Thanks for everything.
My thanks again to Deirdre for her time and expertise. So the store cover stable for this episode is the good old apple. Now we all know the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and this saying has lasted through the years because regularly consumed, they can certainly contribute to our good health. I love roses, and it was actually really interesting to find out that apples and actually pears are members of the rose family. There are loads of varieties available, and we can find them in all sorts of colours: green, yellow, red, and even pink now, with pink ladies being widely available. I'm partial to all of them, to be honest, but I probably have a soft spot for a Granny Smith. I always have a good store of apples because they're not only crisp and delicious to eat, but very versatile. Now, apples are thought to originate from Eastern Europe and Southwestern Asia, but of course they're grown all over the world. So I mentioned that there are loads of varieties available. There's actually over 7,000 varieties in the global market. And of course, we know that references to apples go back to biblical times when an apple was used to tempt Adam in the Garden of Eden, and even in fairy tales like Snow White. In Norse mythology, they were actually even believed to keep people young forever. So that's the antioxidants. Tart apples are traditionally used in cooking, but they would usually require some sugar to sweeten them. So I actually use the sweeter varieties in my baking, so then I don't have to add any processed sugar at all. Now, raw apples contain fiber, vitamin C, pectin, potassium, and they also contain really good antioxidants and phytochemicals, such as ellagic acid, chlorogenic acid, and flavonoids like quercetin. So really good, really high in antioxidants. Regular consumption has been associated with reduced risk of heart disease, cancer, asthma, and type 2 diabetes. So of course, that's as part of an overall healthy diet and lifestyle. Now, I mentioned pectin, and pectin is a soluble fiber which can help to lower cholesterol levels and improve the ability of the muscles in our GI tract to push waste through so that we can eliminate it. So basically, this insoluble fiber and pectin keeps us regular, but it can also help to relieve both constipation and diarrhea. Now, while a lot of the important nutrients are under the skin, even a peeled apple contains 2.75 grams of fiber, so that's still really good. If you buy apples organic, then of course you should still wash them in water. If they're not organic, then it's a really good idea to really give them a good scrub, because when we see them in the shop, sometimes they have this like shiny, waxy coat, and of course that's not natural. I'll put a link to washing fruit and veg in the show notes. You can wash them with things like baking soda. You can scrub them with a nail brush. But of course, if you're unsure about pesticides or anything like that, you can peel them too. So when we buy our apples, what are we going to do with them? Well, of course, we can eat them raw as a lovely snack with maybe a little handful of nuts, like say 5 or 6 cashews or walnuts, or a handful of pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds, just to add protein to our snack. We can slice them and add them to salads. They're fabulous, not just in fruit salads, but in vegetable salads as well. Another idea for a snack actually is to slice the apple and just put a little bit of nut butter on top and a tiny little bit of cinnamon. That makes a nice little snack too. Of course, apple crumble. I've probably mentioned crumble an awful lot. It's one of my favorites. I would stew up some apples, and I usually add in something else like berries or maybe a pear. Again, that just sweetens it all up. And then for the topping, I'll add protein in my topping. So I'll have some oats, ground almonds, maybe put in some sunflower, pumpkin seeds as well, or some crushed walnuts, whatever you like, into the topping. I might have a little bit of maple syrup on that too, but I'll put a recipe to sort of my basic version in the show notes as well. One of my favorites, though. It's a real staple in this house. Gorgeous cold as well. Now, of course, you can stew up apple and keep it. It'll last for a few days in a clean glass jar in the fridge. Freezes quite well too. So stewed apple is lovely just by itself, or you can add it to your porridge, to rice pudding, to chia puddings, to pretty much any dessert. And of course, apples are can be used in lots of desserts. So again, I'll try and find some recipes of some healthy desserts using apples and put them in the show notes too. So I hope there's enough information there to encourage you to add some more whole foods into your shopping trolley this week. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I just wanted to clarify that the podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional care from a doctor or trained health professional, nor constitute medical advice or services if you're in a position to need either. However, if you found it interesting, you can subscribe to make sure you don't miss future episodes, or sign up for my newsletter on lynsharkeynutrition.ie.